Somewhere between 10 and 25% of everything we look at is North Koreans. That's the really scary thing that came up in Drift is like they had real people with real resumes that worked at real tech companies and got the developers to download malware. Every time we find a company and we ask them about them, we're like, hey, do you know these guys? They're like, yeah, they're pretty good devs. And then you like sort of show them the red flags for DPRK IT workers and they're like, oh shit. You ask them about where they live. You're like, oh, you're in Houston. What's a good restaurant in Houston? And they say, oh, there are no good restaurants here. It's like, come on, man.
This episode is brought to you by Nexo. Step into a new era of digital wealth. Earn interest on your digital assets, borrow against them without selling, and trade all in one platform. Get started at nexo.com/breakdown. Nothing said on The Breakdown is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are opinions, not financial advice. Hosts and guests may hold positions in the company's funds or projects discussed.
Crypto is really going through it. On one hand, we have traditional finance finally starting to operate on-chain. Hyperliquid is also gaining steam, and it's now quickly becoming a primary and central venue for weekend price discovery, particularly through oil perps. So on the surface, crypto seems to be evolving past its perception as some degenerate internet casino. What's grown into a weird mess of blockchains, protocols, exchanges, bridges, and tokens actually has morphed into its own legitimate tech stack that has the world's biggest institutions practically one-shotted over the potential benefits of a tokenized financial system.
We're just at the beginning of the tokenization of all assets, from real estate to equities, the bonds. So we look at that as the next wave of opportunity for BlackRock.
But the crypto-native vision of an on-chain environment filled with DeFi opportunities to earn yield, activate capital, and trustlessly hedge all sorts of different risks is actively under attack. Can DeFi survive? Let's see if we can figure it out. I'm your host, David Canellis, and this is The Breakdown. Let's get to it. Over the last few weeks alone, we've had a new cluster of incidents across DeFi and adjacent crypto infrastructure, including major hits on protocols like Drift, Silo, Aether, Hyperbridge, Rhea, Zerion, and then KelpDAO, which at roughly $292 million was reported as the largest exploit of the year so far. And of course, it's not like there weren't any DeFi exploits before this year, because there have always been these types of incidents. What's changing is that the threat model is clearly moving up the stack. A few years ago, DeFi was considered risky because smart contracts could have catastrophic bugs. Then there were flash loan attacks and other quote-unquote highly profitable trading strategies involving price oracles that could result in major losses. But the most recent wave of attacks on DeFi is much more threatening. Recent events have emphasized that phishing, compromised credentials, and other operational failures were driving a large share of losses alongside traditional exploits. So even if the code gets better, that does not mean that the system is secure. On top of the smart contract hacks, now developer teams have to think about access control, key management, wallet compromise, social engineering, misconfiguration, validation assumptions, cross-chain dependencies, front ends, team operational security, internal permissions, liquidity routing. The list is effectively endless. Now, there is truth to the saying that sometimes the hardest things are the ones most worth doing, and building a resilient DeFi ecosystem is incredibly difficult, especially one that prioritizes composability, the idea that everything plugs into everything. But composability is also what makes DeFi exploits so brutal. There is usually contagion to some degree, so the attacks are never really contained just to one protocol. It hits liquidity, it hits trust, it forces other protocols to react. Reporting around the Kelp exploit, for example, tied it almost immediately to broader stress across DeFi liquidity and a major drawdown in Aave deposits, dropping from over $45.5 billion to under $34 billion in 4 days. With all of this in mind, DeFi is clearly under attack, most prominently by North Korean-linked hacking crews like Lazarus. At the same time, it's worth making it clear that what's happening in crypto and DeFi right now is a preview of what happens when traditional finance becomes more composable, more internet native, and more open, and we know that traditional finance is moving in this direction. So the matter at hand is not whether DeFi can ever be perfectly safe. It can't. No meaningful financial system is. The real issue is whether it can become secure enough to support real scale without losing qualities that made it worth building in the first place. In order to do that, though, we might need to start re-examining how we define big topics like decentralization, permissionlessness, and trust, especially in light of Arbitrum's clawback of $71 million in crypto stolen in the KelpDAO attack. I recently caught up with crypto analytics and forensics specialist Nick Bax to discuss all this and more, and here's what we spoke about.
Step into a new era of digital wealth with Nexo, the premier digital assets wealth platform. Earn interest on your digital assets, borrow against them without selling, trade a wide range of cryptocurrencies, all in one place. Nexo is now available again in the US with an evolved product suite tailored to today's market. For a limited time, new US clients can unlock 30 days of exclusive Wealth Club Premier benefits, including enhanced interest rates, reduced borrowing costs, and up to 0.5% crypto cashback on trades. Get started today at nexo.com/breakdown. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research. This week I have crypto investigator Nick Bax with us today. Thank you for joining us, man.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Great to talk to you, David.
Cool. So yeah, to give you give the audience a little bit of background on what you've been up to at least this week. I can understand that you were close to the metal in terms of the Arbitrum situation with the Kelp DAO attack. Maybe you could just give a brief rundown of what you're really doing day to day in the crypto space.
Yeah, so I'm a blockchain investigator. I do everything from developing analytics methods. That's how I really got into it. To the fun part is applying them. So I look at every type of crypto crime, everything from wrench attacks, which have been going up a lot in the past year or so, to pig butchering, to, of course, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 25% of everything we look at is North Koreans. So look at everything. Some of it I do, in my private practice. A lot of it I do at SEAL 911 as an incident responder. Yeah, just do what has to be done.
I have some questions about all this, about like the split between like individual attacks and these attacks on protocols a little bit later. But and I'm sure that a lot of the stuff that happened with SEAL 911 and the Arbitrum situation is confidential. But I'm wondering if you could like give a rundown of what that looked like as it was happening. Was it something that Arbitrum reached out to you, or was SEAL 911 proactive about the situation?
Well, yeah, I can't really talk about who did what, who talked to who. But the way SEAL 911 works is someone reaches out to us. They say, "Help! All my money's gone," and then we say, "Can you tell us more?" And sometimes they got fished for $1,500, or sometimes 200 something million dollars got stolen from a smart contract, and then we do triage. So then triage, it's the same as an EMT coming to an emergency. It's like, stop the bleeding, which the Kelp DAO team did a great job at. They actually did manage to freeze some funds when the North Koreans were trying to steal more, right? And then it's, okay, we've stopped the bleeding. What can we do to fix this? You need to know who did it. You need to understand exactly what happened, where the money's at right now, and is there anything we can do to fix this? And this is every single incident that we respond to, either at SEAL 911 or in non-SEAL incidents. Yeah, and SEAL 911, man, the team is full of the best people I've ever worked with. I've studied and worked at some prestigious institutions, and they were always talking about imposter syndrome, but I never felt it until I got to SEAL 911. It's just, we have subject matter experts for everything that could possibly have to do with crypto. So, people do their part. We figure out what the best parts are. And things get done. Yeah.
How big is the team?
It's about 30 people.
Yeah. Nice one. And yeah, I'm wondering, like, because I understand like every protocol is different, and then every chain is different, every protocol is different, and like every app is also different. And like, I'm just wondering, like, is there any element to this of like before incidents happen that you would kind of investigate how the protocols are actually structured, and then so you kind of have an understanding of what tools are available to protocol insiders or like DAOs and stuff like that to actually mitigate some of these situations? Or is it really like when an incident happens, that's when that kind of information gets pieced together?
Yeah, I have a significant amount of money in DeFi. I kind of know what levers the various teams have. Yeah, I do a lot of due diligence before I park. I don't have that much money, but I would be very upset if it got rugged. So I do a lot of due diligence in what I park my money in. Now, that being said, I did not foresee the contagion that could happen because of like an issue with one project. You know, like it cascaded. It really was contagion that nobody. You know, hindsight is 2020, but I didn't foresee it. I don't really know a lot of people who did. But yeah, we're crypto users first, and almost all of us got into this because we got rugged ourselves, and nobody else is going to fix it. So you have to, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose it's a good time to ask, like, because I'm just wondering, like, if security in crypto is getting better or worse, and I think it's like a function of where the attack is. Like, I know, like, the North Koreans are their own kind of cohort and their own army, effectively, and then it's up to like the individual attackers, like what they're targeting. But it's like for the longest time, it was like SIM swaps were a big deal, and so like individual investors were getting targeted a lot. And then you've brought up wrench attacks, and there's a lot happening in France and across other parts of like Northern Europe too. But it just seems that like how much of that is still happening compared to the size of the protocols that are being attacked? Because it just seems like that the DeFi in particular, there is a big wave of attention from hackers targeting like teams specifically, so like social engineering and stuff like that. Like, is the SIM swap era over, or is it really just a mess of everything?
Yeah, we SIM swaps lasted for years, right? They started up 2015. I got SIM swapped in 2017. They were still happening frequently until the end of 2019. And then finally, the telcos made some improvements. It's pretty rare these days. You occasionally hear about SIM swaps. Yeah. But somehow that problem solved itself. And I don't know the exact answer for why that went away. I think a lot of companies stopped using SMS two factor. It took way longer than it should have. So, the industry does respond to security issues, and it's gotten a lot better. SIM swapping lasted for years, and a lot of other problems, got fixed pretty fast. So click fix was a big issue on Max where, attackers were telling people to copy and paste something into their terminal. And of course it wrecks you. So now the new Mac OS actually warns you and prevents you from doing that, which is fantastic, right? So and it happened a lot faster than SIM swapping was fixed. So but attackers are innovative and they know what works. And especially the North Koreans are really good at getting remote access to your computer. And crypto projects haven't been doing a fantastic job at defending against that. There's all of these centralized issues, right? 2 of 5, 3 of 5 multisigs. And let's say, they have a 20% or a 20% success rate of getting someone to download a payload and getting remote access to their computer. And you have, 5 targets. You're going to get one of them. And then you just have to figure out, keep putting shots on goals and attacker. Eventually you'll get that 2 of 5 multisig that you need. And it's scary. It happens a lot.
Are you of the mind that a lot of this is avoidable? Because I mean, I guess it like comes from the structure of the multi-sig's okay, but then it is also like it still comes down to the individual person. So it's like, I mean, is that like an org issue? Like it's very hard to see how it isn't solvable, and it's more of like a culture problem. Like I wonder how you see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that projects can do to at least make it harder for the attackers, right? So Seal puts out all sorts of multi-signature frameworks that give a list of best practices. One of the really good ones is EDR. It's like endpoint detection on computers that, control important things. And even then, all of the EDRs aren't equivalent. Some are better than others. So there's little things that certainly help. And every time we see an attack, we figure out what would have prevented this. And sometimes we update the framework to include those. But security is hard, man. And there's a very big incentive and a lot of money being spent by the attackers invested into these attacks.
I'm just curious. Like, this is a little bit of a tangent. Like, it's only because everyone always talks about AI and like cybersecurity and AI and like how do you view that? Like, are you using that as a tool? Like, is it actually, or is it like an attack vector? Like, I'm just curious.
It's both, and I think in the long run, it's going to help the defenders more than it's going to help the attackers. But right now, it's helping the attackers a lot. It can automate a lot of stuff that you couldn't use before. On the flip side, it does help. If you see an issue and it helps analyze it, it helps write the code or figure out how to fix the issue very quickly. So everything just happens faster, and that's scary when you're an incident responder and you have to stop the attacker, but it's also really helpful. So I don't know. I hope that the AI stuff plateaus soon, and then we can just focus on using it to make systems stronger and more robust. Right. But right now, the attackers, they just move faster. We're reacting to them.
Let's take a moment to talk about Nexo. Nexo delivers a premier digital assets wealth platform designed to help clients build, manage, and preserve their wealth, earn interest on your digital assets, access crypto-backed credit without selling your holdings, trade with advanced tools, all supported by 24/7 client care. Now back in the US, Nexo offers new clients 30 days of exclusive Wealth Club Premier access. That means enhanced interest rates, reduced borrowing costs, and up to 0.5% crypto cashback on trades. Benefits typically reserved for Wealth Club members and private clients. Nexo is also expanding its global presence, becoming the official crypto partner of Tennis Australia, the organisation behind the Australian Open, and the digital asset partner of the Audi Revolut Formula One team. If you're ready to approach digital assets with a more structured wealth strategy, visit nexo.com/breakdown to get started. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions apply. Do your own research. Yeah, and is that like you would kind of push people more towards using like their own offline models rather than kind of like the always online ones? Like
those AI data breaches scare the crap out of me. Right. There was one at Lovable earlier this week that was really, really bad. Right. And now they're saying it wasn't a data breach, which is insane. But yeah, like if Anthropic's data leaked, that would be really bad. Everybody's uploading keys to their AI all the time. It's like hard to prevent. So yeah, I think in the long run, AI privacy has a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And yeah, and maybe just bear with me with this kind of next thing I'm wondering about, because it's like this. It's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't with crypto and the blockchain space in general, because like, okay, we have very decentralized protocols. You can't just go and hack Ethereum. Like, that's very obvious. So, and also a lot of layer ones aren't super efficient. So you have to go and use more centralized protocols, layer twos and stuff like that, in order to do the most interesting stuff like trading and stuff like that. So, but you end up having this situation where you do have protocols that have some element of centralization to them. And that is exactly what makes it attractive to attackers. But at the same time, teams and protocols don't really want to admit that they do have these tools available to them, because that would admit that they are somewhat centralized. And then that also brings some amount of liability of investor protection, user protection, if they do have those controls. So like I somehow feel like we're just kind of stuck at this point where it's like, it can't be solved. Like it does take industry-wide culture of really admitting that we do have these tools available to us to defend in these situations, but nobody wants to admit that they do have these tools. I was just like wondering, like, how do you think about all of that?
That is a hot topic this month, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody always wants to think or believe that blockchains are immutable, but the reality, even Bitcoin, has always relied on social consensus, right? And I think it's great that Arbitrum is the center of attention right now, because I think they're actually one of the protocols that's really doing it right. Take a step back. Look at how Monero handles it, for example. So Monero is one of the most decentralized cryptocurrencies. They're like very crypto anarchist libertarian types, right? And back in 2017, they actually found a crypto note inflation bug, and it allowed an attacker to create an essentially infinite amount of Monero. And they had to keep it secret for months. They had to somehow sneak the code into a hard fork. And if even a single person leaked it, it would have destroyed their entire network and every other network that used the crypto note code. So, they managed to pull it off, which is amazing. And then, now you've got Arbitrum. They've got a 9 of 12 multisig. Every society has had people that we delegated secrets to. We trust them, I don't expect the FBI to be completely transparent about their ongoing investigations. And I sort of see that 9 of 12 multisig the same way, right? It's 12 very transparently elected people or companies that we trust. They're staking their reputations to not screw us around. And they do handle these really sensitive secrets because there are things that, there are vulnerabilities that could destroy a network or cause, some major issues to the integrity and loss of funds. So you do need to have these people at least right now. And even going forward, I don't really know how you can ever fix that, right? Because we're talking about edge cases, things that nobody could have predicted. So I do think, having 9 or 12 people that you trust to secretly handle these issues is the right way to do it, at least for now. Now, on the other hand, you have a 2 of 5 multisig that can only it's only supposed to be able to change parameters, but it turns out if you change those parameters in just the right way, you can steal all the money from a protocol. That's really problematic, and that's something that auditors have to really shine a light at that. The other problem is those 2 of 5 signers, they're in the same building, they're sending each other emails and code all the time. If you hack one, you can pretend to be him and send code to the other and he'll run it, and then you've hacked 2, right? So decentralization is a spectrum, and we really have to push towards at least the Arbitrum level. I have a lot of money in Arbitrum. I'm not worried at all about 9 of 12 of those signers getting hacked and rugging my funds, right? But that's not the same for other protocols.
Yeah, it's so difficult because it's you just there's just so much shit posting, and it's people see the Arbitrum stuff and then they make jokes about DeFi and decentralized finance and stuff, and and then my knee-jerk reaction to that is that it's this might be a little bit silly, but by default, DeFi is decentralized just because there are so many protocols. There is such a wide array of different things going on, from all parts of the world. So as a whole, it is decentralized finance, but there is still thresholds that apps and protocols operating within that space do need to meet in order to really have that title. Do you see it getting better? And it's just so painful that it's we have to have these big giant incidents for it to make sense. And Drift was a very different thing because that was a long-term social engineering thing, at the business level. And it's do you see it getting better? Because it just feels like a lot of these things are recipes for copycats and all of that kind of thing.
I hope it gets better.
Yeah,
I think all we can do is shine a light at the practices that aren't the best, and the market is putting a lot of pressure on people now. Especially you're not going to park $1 million in a protocol if you know that 2 of their developers get hacked and then you lose all your money, right? And I think people are finally starting to take those risks into account. And that's really what it takes.
And it's scary. I know you work closely with Tay, and then I read some of Tay's posts, and it's it almost some of the things that she says, it's almost like there are sleeper cells in DeFi that have worked at all these protocols. Maybe these are protocols left over from DeFi Summer a few years ago or something like that. And it's does it take a proactive screening of protocols that do exist now and what they're doing? That seems like the next logical step, that you would kind of root out
projects that do seem quite sketchy, or at least there's question marks over what their provenance is as an organization, I guess. Is that part of what Seal is doing? Like, it's a very responder, like responsive unit, I guess. But I guess there's room to go out and really kind of proactively analyze what the protocols are.
Yeah, and we do a lot of that. So there's a group of people that I'm a part of that specifically tries to root out DPRK IT workers.
Yeah.
Tanuki 42 is really big on that, and then there's a guy Black Big Swan who's also heading up those efforts. It's very fun. We there are IT workers that have been working in DeFi since DeFi Summer,
Yeah.
and they're pretty good devs. Every time we find a company and we ask them about them, we're like, "Hey, do you know these guys?" They're like, "Yeah, they're pretty good devs." And then you like sort of show them the red flags for DPRK IT workers, and they're like, "Oh shit." It's pretty unusual that a company will be like, "No, I trust that guy." As soon as you tell them, they're like, "Oh, yeah."
What are some of those red flags?
Okay, so and they've changed because the IT workers have gotten better over time. But you know, sometimes they like push code from different GitHub accounts, which doesn't make any sense. Like everybody has one GitHub account. So you got a guy using 2 or 3 different GitHub accounts and constantly getting, new email addresses. Like that's kind of weird. And then you ask them about where they live. You're like, "Oh, you're in Houston. What's a good restaurant in Houston?" And they say, "Oh, there are no good restaurants here." It's like, come on, man. And like you try and meet them in person, and of course they'll never show up. They'll always make an excuse if you invite them to a company offsite or whatever. Now that being said, they've started using facilitators. So it could be anybody in any country. There's people who will go to meetings and pretend to be someone else. So, like, you're literally talking to, or they may rent your identity. We've spoken to these facilitators who rented their social security number and sent copies of their birth certificate to North Koreans so that the North Koreans could work for them. They rent out their freelancer or their Fiverr accounts. It's getting harder. And that's the really scary thing that came up in Drift is like they had real people with real resumes that worked at real tech companies who were claiming to be biz dev or engineering at a company and got the developers to download malware, and that's terrifying, and like it's really hard to defend against. These were people they met in person, so there's no social defense against that. Like these are developers that I would have hired, right? Like they had good resumes. So that's where you really have to do the security. You have to assume that 2 multi-sig signers can get compromised.
Yeah, it just seems like it's like the obvious thing is that at least every VC funded company operating in crypto needs some kind of, I mean, maybe they already do, and maybe you have some insight there, and like a dedicated team within the org that is purely hunting this stuff constantly. You have a few people on the payroll that's just their whole thing. Do you see any of that happening? Like maybe it happens at crypto exchanges, and that happened because so many exchanges were being hacked in the past half decade. But are you seeing that trend at all?
So yeah, we've gotten a lot better, especially about information sharing between companies. So yeah, any company with 5 engineers will have one guy who's well versed in security, but they may not be. It may be a guy who is a Solidity developer and he does security on the side. And he follows crypto Twitter, so he kind of knows the threats, but he may not know the exact details. So that's one of the things that Seal 911 really helps bridge the gap. And that's also there's the DAO Security Fund is trying to it's more efficient to have being centralized is more efficient sometimes, right? So we're kind of and having you don't necessarily need a dedicated security person at every company. You might want a network of people who can share intel. And that's one of the things that's unique to crypto is because all the DeFi companies all kind of interact with each other, either, like on chain or actually in person with agreements. So they're all kind of one big company in a way. So you do need some joint security. So I think information sharing about like the emerging threats is really, really important for that.
I'm wondering, like, the difference between your advice for like individuals who might just have a bunch of money caught up in Aave or something like that, like compared to protocols. Like, is it the same advice really? Like,
It depends. I mean, how rich you are, right?
yeah,
If you're below $1 million, I think a hardware wallet is probably pretty good. If you're a bigger target, you need to, there are services for high net worth individuals that help them improve their OPSEC. You really do need to think about all of the different things that could arise. Security is hard. I mean, it's, you know, the idea that I have like 12 words hidden in a safe deposit box somewhere that control most of my net worth is terrifying, right? And I know what I'm doing. I know, like most people don't. It's really scary. And those are things that I think the industry is trying to fix, especially for individuals.
makes a lot of sense. And we only have time for maybe a couple more, but I'm wondering your take on Thorchain, because I mean, I think just the concept of developing mixes in particular is like, it feels kind of over because of everything that happened with Tornado Cash. And I know Tornado Cash still functions, but it just seems like that at least the DPRK is like focusing on laundering their funds through Thorchain. And then when I read the discourse about Thorchain, it's like, well, its brand is that it's really decentralized, and they are really avoiding involvement at all in stopping a lot of this stuff. Like, is it as decentralized as they're claiming? Like, can they actually do something, or is it just it's a function of the crypto space that if it's not going to be Thorchain, it's going to be another one. So I'm wondering how you're feeling about it.
That's a tough question. So up until I think February 2025, they did have admin keys that could basically have shut down Thorchain, and it was centralized, right? And they actually did use those admin keys to shut off the lending, and I think maybe also the trading. I think they did remove those admin keys a little over a year ago. So then the next question is, I believe they're run by 100 nodes. Now, how many of those node operators are unique? That's a tough question, right? I don't have a very solid answer for that. I can tell you it's not 100 separate individuals, right? There's definitely some people running more than one node, or very closely associated people running nodes. It's more of like an ethical issue, right? Like, what value are you creating if your biggest user by a lot is North Korea, right? Like, yeah, you're making lots of money and you bought a helicopter. Good for you. But like, you're still a piece of shit, I'll just say it. It's not. They're not creating value for most users. And could they stop it? I think they know their system better than I do. They could have stopped it when they had the admin key. They probably could still figure out how to at least add a lot of friction for DPRK, but they don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, there is always a way. Like, it's I mean, a decentralized protocol is great, but there's so many layers, that you can work through to actually kind of like, make life more difficult. And it's just so difficult because it's like there'll always be something else as well. So it does take a proactive approach to stuff that's happening, and I suppose that does just make everything more interesting because there is always something to respond to, which I guess is is good if you're in the investigation business, I guess. Do you feel like that it is just a constant like whack-a-mole game, or it's like we are heading to some kind of equilibrium where it's like these are the tools that exist, and we just kind of need to operate within the space that has been built?
Yeah, I hope that we hit an equilibrium where only the secure protocols are left.
Yeah,
And but no, it is whack-a-mole, and I hate being reactive, and it's getting harder to react, right? $71 million was a very big win, and we don't get a lot of
for
those.
sure.
Now that being said, now that that cat is out of the bag, I don't think DPRK is gonna go and raid Arbitrum for liquidity anymore, right? And that's actually going to protect them in the long run. They're just not going to risk it. So they do stay away from protocols that fight back. Linea is another one that like they don't really go there, and I think Tay may have scared them off. There's a few other services that they don't use anymore because they've gotten burned. So the question is, what can we do? And there's always something. And I point at Circle. That they're really easy to point at because they're deliberately not doing anything.
Yeah, it's really tough, and I think it also just goes back to like decentralization is a brand, and it's like you can adopt that brand, even though the reality of the matter is that you don't really have a claim on that brand also, and it's like this kind of standoff between wanting to admit that you do use these tools available to you to freeze, and I mean even clawback. It's very different, and it's like that's such like a flimsy thing to have to battle against this concept of decentralization as a brand. It's super frustrating. But so I mean I think we might end on like your advice for like people wanting to break into the on-chain investigation game, because if anything, the space needs more on-chain investigators who really know their stuff and know the tools available and all of that. It's like, is it possible to break into this without having a lot of funding yourself to like go and pay for chain analysis or something like that? Like, how, if you were like a 16-year-old kid wanting to do this, like how would you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, Zach didn't have TRM for the first few years, right? Arkham Intel is a very effective tool. Tay uses Arkham all the time. I like you said, chain analysis is expensive, but the way there's two things you can do to get started. One is follow every other investigation that you see on Twitter and just try and repeat the steps and see, just master the skills. And then the other is just start helping random people. And that's hard. And you have to be careful. You don't want to give people bad advice, but there is no shortage of cases to look at. That's how I got my start, right? I was just helping random people who, the police weren't going to help them because they didn't know. So there's no shortage of people to help. And as long as you're careful about it, I think about 10% of cases are solvable or actionable. So just do it because you can.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I think we might leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us today, Nick. And hope to have you back on the breakdown soon. Hopefully after not a catastrophic incident for this space, but just back on under better circumstances.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me, David. See you.
That's about all the time we have for today. Let me know how you're feeling about DeFi and the North Korean hacking spree in the comments, and we'll see you next time.